For the best in paranormal talk radio, you're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary.
Night Dreams, Scary Story Night on Friday nights. Call in at 9:30 p.m. Pacific at 1-253-203-6695.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, down at the compound today at the harbor, well, it's been raining all day. It's cold, and you know what? I'm not even going to talk about news tonight. I can just say I'm really frustrated. Other than I can say one of Saudi Arabia said to our president today, no more oil. You're getting enough. We're not going to step it up anymore. They're concerned right now that oil prices, are going up. And, it's been going up for the last couple of weeks. It's now at the 4-year high cycle. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it'll have any effect with our economy. I don't know anymore. Frankly, this is Friday, so I don't care. Well, right after this, we're going to have Tobias on, and we're going to be talking about, things paranormal. We'll be right back.
Please check out the Night Dreams Talk Radio website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Also, if you want to keep our show free of advertising, just hit the donate button. Give a buck or two. Remember, all prior shows are always free to listen to. We at Night Dreams Talk Radio thank you for your support.
Well, Tobias, how you doing tonight?
Hey, pretty good, Gary. How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. Like I told you before we went on the air, my chair broke today. I guess after about 4 years and being a big guy, it said I can't take it anymore. So if you hear a big bang today, it's because, no, we're not getting bombed. It's actually, I've probably fallen off the chair. Anyway, Tobias,
I hope you have somebody there, because I'm 2 time zones away, so I can't help you out.
Oh, that's okay. I can crawl and get myself back up. I think I'm okay as long as I sit in the middle of the chair and don't wobble.
Great.
Well, how's the weather where you're at right now?
It's not too bad, honestly. It's a little rainy. It's a little foggy, but that's what I prefer. So, pretty good.
Well, I think summer is long gone, and I got a funny feeling we're going to have a real, real cold winter.
I could see it. I'm in the Midwest. We're actually based out of Madison, Wisconsin. So, honestly, no matter what, we're going to have a cold winter.
Yeah, just hopefully it's not colder than normal. Hey, tonight, what do you want to talk about in the paranormal?
Well, I would like to probably, maybe get a little bit into my background, maybe get probably a little more in depth about what I'm working on now. But first and foremost, I think I'd want to start by introducing myself to all of your wonderful listeners and telling them a little bit about what I do. So my name is Tobias Wayland, and what my wife and I what we've done is we've actually put together a website and journalism and outreach organization called the Singular Fortean Society. And I understand that name can be a little confusing, I think, to some people if they don't know where the word Fortean comes from. So, singular obviously is fairly self-explanatory in that, it refers to something unique or outstanding, which I think not only we are, but also, everybody else who is interested in these sorts of subjects. But the word Fortean comes from the early 20th century collector of weird news stories, Charles Fort. And he wrote a whole series of books on what he called damned data. And so what that concept was that he thought that there was a lot of weird stuff happening in the world, and he thought that it was being ignored, and he thought that that was a real shame. And so he would collect these weird stories from all over the place, and he would publish them in these books, these collections, and he would sort of speculate and ponder on, any larger meaning or connections and things like that. And so what, we've tried to do is sort of take that into the 21st century and get as many people as we can together, communicate with as many people as possible through the most expansive network we have, which is the internet, obviously, and just take that study and that curiosity regarding the unusual, and just bring it into the present.
Wow!
And so, sorry, go ahead.
I just said, "Wow, that sounds really interesting."
Well, thank you. I mean, certainly we think it's pretty fascinating stuff. And so, I guess, delving a little bit into my background, I started as a field investigator volunteering with the Mutual UFO Network. That would have been, oh boy, how old am I? That would have been around a decade ago. And I did that for about 5 years. And that was interesting stuff. It was nice to have sort of their resources, I think, at hand as far as, essentially just being handed cases, and researching that and investigating those cases, I think really gave me a pretty solid background as far as experience, I think, in looking into this kind of weirdness. So if you've got any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer it.
Well, I got to ask you a question. Going back, and maybe even when you were a child, what got you interested in the paranormal and UFOs, and then from UFOs into what you're doing now?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, and frankly, it's one that I normally ask people who are also in this field, whenever I meet them. So. I like to think that I'd be a pretty normal guy, Gary, if I hadn't had a series of what I consider very unusual occurrences, from childhood up into adulthood. I think that, well, let me just say this. So Charles Fort had this saying. It was, one measures a circle beginning anywhere. And sort of what he meant by that was, by studying any aspect of the paranormal, you can understand something about every aspect. And so when I talk about the weird things that happened to me as a kid and, growing up with that into adulthood, I still don't have, any sort of satisfying explanation for any of it, frankly. What it comes down to is it was all very weird. If you asked 3 different people from 3 different specialties in the paranormal, they would all give you different answers as to what it was. And none of that, I think, gets us any closer to really understanding it. So to give you an example, well, here's a pretty good one. So I was... this is a little later, and I'll talk probably more about some of the later stuff because, the things from when I was a real little kid, like that's hazy childhood sort of memories. So when I was 21, I had, moved back in with my parents briefly, just sort of in between apartments in college, figuring out what I was doing. And so at that time, I was working second shift, and I had come home, and I guess sort of bear in mind that at this point, I had experienced a lot of strange, I guess a lot of people would have probably considered like haunting sort of phenomena. And so, because I was working second shift, my parents were always asleep before I came home. And so, I would come home, I would make dinner, I would do my absolute best not to wake them up. And that usually meant like making sure that the lights were on and off in a room as quickly as possible if I had to pass through it. And so if you can picture sort of an open floor plan kitchen dining room area. So I just eaten in the kitchen, and I was going to move into the dining room. And so I had turned off the light in the kitchen, and I knew the area well enough where I didn't need any lights to sort of traverse through the dining room and get to the stairs to go upstairs to my bedroom. And so I'm midway through the dining room, and you ever have that feeling where you can sense something next to you, like you haven't run into it yet, but you know if you just took another step, you're going to run right into it. Well, I had that feeling, and I heard this loud hiss, and hand to God, Gary, I felt this hot breath on the left side of my face, and I stood stock still, and I just sort of swore under my breath and kept going, and just power walked upstairs and went to bed. But that's the sort of stuff I'm talking about, and it's weird, it's inexplicable, and it's well, like I said before, I mean, some people would call, depending upon which lens you're viewing the paranormal, that would be a ghost to some people, a demon to others, an alien to some, who knows?
Boy,
So,
I apologize. I forgot to hit the mic button there for a second. But, boy, I would, in a situation like that, it would be concerning to me. But, something like that would have got me going into the paranormal.
Well, yeah, honestly, there's something like the paranormal itself to motivate you into wanting to understand it, frankly. There are a lot of people in this field who, I think see, I don't know, what they perceive as easy access to celebrity, or, even just have sort of a passing fancy to weirdness. But I think by and large, most people who, are willing to devote a significant amount of time into research and investigation and things, it's because they've experienced something, honestly. And certainly that's true for me.
Well, you're so right on that. One thing too, doing a show like I do, I get all kinds of guests on, and I had a couple times, the past year, I had a ghost hunting group that wanted to come on. They really pushed wanting to come on. I got them on. It was interesting. When I had them on, I realized the first 5 minutes I made a mistake by having them on as guest, because the very first thing they were talking about is, well, we want to get picked up by a cable channel. Yeah. And then I started asking questions. I said, okay, well, how many ghost hunts have you really been on? Well, we've been on 2 or 3. And I go, you've been on 2 or 3 ghost hunts? Yeah, we gone to a couple of people's houses for an hour or two and checked them out for ghosts and stuff like that. And I said, well, have you gone to cemeteries or, old prisons or asylums or anything? No. But, when we get picked